Well, my name is Penny Taylor. I've been a resident in the city of Naples for 35 years. I've owned my own business. I'm a small business owner for 30 of those 35 years. I know what it is to have budgets. I know what it is to hire and fire. I have a very strong business base, but I also was lucky enough to be elected to the Naples City Council for 10 years. And I like to say I was there when the towers fell and when the economy took a nosedive. I know what it is to shake the hand of an employee one week only to find out he's been laid off the next. I understand public safety. I know what it is to stand alone on a vote. I voted on taxes. I voted on health and safety. I voted on the environment. I voted on zoning. I am a person with real experience, and I would like to take it to the County Commission. I am currently running for District 4 seat in the County Commission.
Okay. Tell us a bit about your business.
My business?
Mm-hmm.
My business, I'm a photographer. I have served both the public and the commercial elements of our town for 30 years. I actually started when I came into town at the Naples Daily News. That's why I came here. I worked for a year, traveled around the county, got to know the county pretty well as a photographer. You have to understand there wasn't a lot going on back there, and so you spent a lot of time driving around and exploring, and that got me involved with areas like Immokalee and Everglades City and understanding their similarities and how their differences are to the more urban area.
As you travel the county these days, what are the issues that are on people's mind? What are folks talking to you about?
You know, a lot of it has to do with how much money they're paying, whether it be taxes, whether it be cost of living. It's still, you know, we may be in theory out of the deep recession, but it's still on people's minds. They're anxious about that. Also the growth, very, very concerned about what they see as unbridled growth. Not understanding that these areas have been zoned for years. It's just the economy that's pushing them to develop right now. Staff is worried because they understand we're moving into a time frame where we're sort of moving into the future but living the past, where we're worrying about infrastructure, keeping up with this growth, especially in the east, the roads. It takes 7 years from concept to where the rubber rides on that road, and they believe that we're behind, and I think they're coming in front of the commission in September, I've been told, to suggest ways of financing this and going forward, because they need to start breaking ground pretty soon. You know, there's an overpass planned for 951 and US 41.
Are you hearing any comments as you're going around the county about the leadership of the county government, county commission, county administration?
Yes, I think there is a concern that there is a sense of dismay is the wrong word. There's a sense that the leadership is gone awry, that it's not for the good of the county, it's more for personal ends. There is a culture of fear been created among the staff, that is for sure. And you know, it is very concerning.
Where is that originating from on the county level? Would you say on the county commission or from the administration?
No, I think it's more from the commission board itself, the CEOs of the county. I think that's where it's coming from. That's my understanding. There's a reluctance of the public even to come before the commission for fear of personal retribution.
And so how would you change that if you were elected to this position? How would you get that groundswell moving in a different direction?
To get the groundswell moving in a different direction takes a majority vote, and if I'm elected, I'm not sure I would be in the majority, but I've sat on a dysfunctional board before. I know what it is to have colleagues personalize issues, personalize them, and look at someone as a villain because they voted a certain way. I feel that I can bring a lot of experience and perhaps a sense of decorum and civility and respect to the board. And respect for the citizens. I mean, we've experienced boards being disbanded, boards resigning. Why? We have an extraordinary community. We have people here from all walks of life that bring so much to the plate. Why are we telling them to go home? It's wrong. I will work at that to get more public involvement.
Along the lines of a dysfunctional board or not being in the majority, you mentioned you know what it's like to stand alone on a vote.
Yes.
Give us a couple of examples of what you meant.
Well, there was the vote of at the very end of my term where there was a question of the rates for the irrigation for the reused water. Mm-hmm. I stood alone on that. That was a little tough. Then I also have and that's the one I remember because that's towards the end.
You were, and this is going back a while, but you were very involved when Coastal Center Mall was talking about expanding in your neighborhood.
Yes.
You were against the expansion. The expansion went ahead, but do you feel like you had an impact?
Oh, yes, because the movie theaters, you know, it was very difficult at that time. I mean, when you have to start explaining your position, you know you've lost already. And we wanted the movie theaters to be placed where Dillard's is. So that it faced and that the traffic exit on Golden Gate Parkway or Goodlet. It didn't happen. The plan was already there, and that's when we came against the mall. But as we know, Hollywood 20, all with is now up near Costco, and we don't have to deal with that within our neighborhood, and they can deal up there with the police coming there every night and the drugs and the people running through the fields after stealing and things like that.
So you felt like even though the mall did expand, it wasn't the expansion that you feared.
That's right. So I'm happy with them all. That's correct. But it was easy at that time. I mean, this was in the 80s. It was really easy. 80s or 90s, early 90s, I guess, late. It was very easy to put people in this growth, no growth category. So I was, I was given that hat of no growth. And it never was that, but it was very different. We had to come out against it, and so that's how we came out. And then, of course, it took a life of its own for almost a year and a half.
What are the first things you do as a commissioner? What would you introduce?
Oh. Well, I would, I think we would have to look very carefully, given our latest experience with the Hughes oil, with reestablishing the Environmental Advisory Committee. That would be high on my list. What are we as a community without our environment? We have a natural magnet for the world. People come from far and near to experience the Everglades, to see what the wilderness is. What other community has an Everglades? We really need to honor that. I'm not saying that we infringe on property rights. I'm not saying that we infringe on homeowners' rights. But at the same time, we need to put our focus back into the environment and understand what an important component it is for our economy.
How do you feel the current commission has handled the whole situation with Collier Hogan Well and Hughes's?
Oh, I applaud them. I applaud them. I think they're the ones that got the DEP to the table to write the editorial in the paper this week and to take the position that they did. I think that was the right decision. No one is saying that Collier Resources does not have the right for their mineral rights. No one is saying that. I'm not saying that. Of course they do. But let's do it right. And let's stop the shenanigans. Now, I don't know this because I haven't read it, but I know from folks who've lived in Texas, they've told me, Texas has tougher rules on oil drilling than we do here in Florida. And maybe we need to learn from them. And that's, a very strong Republican state. So it's nothing to do with political. It has to do with having the experience and understanding the environment and understanding what they have to look out for. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's been laid out, but I really applaud the commission and what they did. Hats off to them.
There's some who would say that this race between you and your opponent boils down to the Fiala Coil faction versus the 3 majority on the commission. Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, that's kind of what the paper said, and we felt when we started watching the supporters where the supporters were coming from, and it may very well boil down to that. Now we're human beings. We're subject to change. But it seems like that's the way it's shaping up, yes.
Is there anybody on the commission presently or in the past that you would hope to emulate if you were elected to this position?
Oh, what a good question. No, I've had 10 years as a legislator. I think what I would hope to do is work hard, do my homework, and come informed to meetings. That's critical, and give folks access. Stay open to the public. We are elected by the public, and we can never forget that we are public servants with a capital S.
You brought up infrastructure and roads earlier, and shifting more money towards it. I'm wondering, do you see any priorities right now of the board that you could shift money from? Anything the board's focused on?
It's going to be presented, I understand, in September, of how to finance the roads. They can't bond gas tax. They did that, in the early 2000s. They can't bond that anymore. So they have to figure out how to get the revenue. And there are 2 or 3 areas that are going to be brought to the board. So it'll be an interesting discussion.
You mentioned in your literature to insist on a business-friendly environment, encouraging firms to relocate to Collier County. Specifically, how do you go about that? What are your ideas on that front?
Opportunity Naples is doing a great job, but as a community, we need to decide what we want to attract, number one, and then what kind of incentives we want to give the firms that we want to attract here. And without that community discussion, without that consensus, we're going to run amok again, because a lot of folks are going to cry foul if they don't like what they see. So there should be no surprises. We need to reach out and have a very frank discussion, and that hasn't been done quite yet.
The work Bruce Register's doing, is it a work in progress? Is it not complete? Does it need to be torn down and restarted?
No, I think we're moving there, but we're moving there very cautiously, and understandably so. We're still, are licking our wounds from Jackson Labs and what happened there, and nobody wants to go through that again. That was a very disruptive, and for a county that says they want to attract business, it really didn't play very well in the PR category.
What is a good way to attract business here?
Well, I think we've got a great foundation. It's the medical foundation. And I think we need to build on it. Why would we try to do something else? And, you know, where do you want to, if you have a procedure, where do you want to recuperate? Rochester, Minnesota, or Naples, Florida? And so we need to really, and again, Arthrex they've told me that if they had a convention center that was large enough for their meetings, 2,000-3,000 doctors, they would have their educational seminars in Naples. So I think, again, let's assess what we have here right now, and let's build on it. The grass is always greener somewhere else, but I don't think we need to do this. I think we've got the ingredients for great success within the medical field: medical tourism, medical education, improving our facilities. It's a win-win.
You mentioned looking at types of incentives. Would you be open to using county taxpayer money as part of that incentive pool? I
would be open to listening to what incentives are being used in other communities that are successful for economic development, and then bringing it to the people in some form or fashion. You know, when we had the growth management came down in the 80s. We had meetings all over this county. They were headed up by different leaders within the different areas, and we got feedback from that. We can do the same thing. The template's there. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to have the initiative to do it and go to the people. They're the ones, if it's tax money, they're the ones that are going to be paying.
Do the county's airports have any role in economic development going forward?
You know, I hear mixed reviews on that. The idea that Immokalee could become some kind of a cargo airport has been pretty much, in some areas by experts, much smarter than I am. And I will say there is not one aviator on the county commission board or in the management office of the county, and let that be said. I think that that it's probably not the right size airport for that, but there are some interesting plans out there. So I think as we go forward, that they need to play into it, because frankly, that's air transportation, and we've got the airport. So where that goes from there, I don't know. But yeah, it'll have to play. But how, I'm not sure.
Every so often a rumor floats up about electing our county commissioners by popular vote, you know, at large rather than by districts. What do you think of that idea?
You know what, I would love to. I'm very open to looking at that. And I can tell you why. Because when you're a county commissioner, you vote on the whole county, and I think it's important to change and evolve. And we're a very different county than we were 20, 25, 30 years ago. So I would support looking at that.
As it stands now, would you see your primary obligation to vote as a representative of your district versus countywide?
Oh, that's a really good question, and that's something that I've thought about. You represent the area that you're elected in, and you must keep the interest of that district foremost in your mind. But there's always a bigger picture. And I think with thorny issues that may come up, input needs to be, you know, I would go for a lot of input from the community leaders before I made a decision. But it's so easy to fall into a niche where you represent your neighborhood or your area, and that's all you should do, and your district, and you know, to heck with what goes on. But that's not realistic in what we're doing. You know, if the economy taught the downturn of the economy taught us anything, it taught us that we are closer together You know, Maco's not that far away anymore. And neither is Everglades City, and neither is Marco. And we had to come together for a lot of different reasons. This is the last big growth period in Collier County where we're taking virgin land and putting houses on it. And we've got to do it right, because what goes on in the east is going to affect what goes on in the west. And it's all about water. You know, we have lots of water, but what are we going to pay for it? How much are we going to pay for it? And those are the questions that need to be posed and need to be kept in the front of people's minds as they vote. It's a very important time.
I know there's been conversation, I think primarily from Donna Fiala, about changing the zoning designations or updating the zoning code with the advent of racetrack gas stations here. Do you see that as something that's critical? And are there some other new type of institutions that you think we need to look at for special zoning?
Yeah, I think the racetrack, specifically the racetrack on US 41 as you just leave the city, 41 East, it's the wrong place. It's nestled right next, it will be nestled if it's built right next to residential, of neighborhoods that have been established and of neighbors. Those are neighbors over there. I mean, these aren't people that live there 6 months a year. This is a community. And so what could be done in the overlay, the CRA, is to look at the uses permitted in commercial areas and make some of the issues, those uses that will cause negative issues to residential, conditional. That is one way to approach it. And certainly, Racetrack is trying to come into town, and they're being very active. So there's another area, the Golden Gate corridor, where the interstate is built, and you know they're talking about trying to get zoning changed over there, and I would not support that. We are a community of neighborhoods. Strong neighborhoods make stronger communities. This is what makes our community great, our neighborhoods. They're the backbone of this community. And from the neighborhoods come the small businesses. And you know, it's property values, it's quality of life that everybody enjoys now. And as we grow, the pressure for commercial will increase. Of course it will. It's how we grow. It's not if we're going to grow. We're going to grow. How are we going to grow? How are we going to protect our quality of life? Which is the reason people invest a lot of money here.
How do you see the future of the Bayshore area, of that area where there is?
I'm very upbeat on it. I'm very upbeat on it. According to the CRA, every property that's for sale there has got interest in it, or you know, beyond that. It's really not that it's sold, but they've not, you know, it's back, and it's a wonderful area. It's very eclectic. I think hindsight's always 20/20. No one wanted to find the debt that the CRA incurred by buying properties and hoping to flip them in the heyday of the real estate market. But what they did is they got rid of a lot of the drugs and the crime. So I think that was an important step. And they've hung in there, and the neighbors are concerned, and the businesses, you know, there's some wonderful businesses. I'll just put it out there, the best tacos in town. You can find them on Bayshore.
Have you spearheaded any redevelopment efforts before in Naples, and I guess where do you see it going forward from here as far as what you need to do to attract business to that side?
You know what I look at the end of Bayshore. I look at the Isles of Collier. I look at the Botanical Gardens, and I look at Windstar. It's just going to get better. I mean, look at the investment there. And then you've got, and Sable Bay, you've got the club. So I think as Bayshore grows this way, they have to be, there is concern about the types of businesses, and and trying to control a flavor of the street. But I think that's next to impossible. You have too many property owners. And it's not 3rd Street with one property owner, and you can't master plan it. You could if people could come together, but that's going to be very difficult. But some pretty nice homes are being built. You know, a whole area was raised, and now homes are going in there. So there's a lot of quiet activity, and I'm optimistic.
Talk to us a little bit about the beaches. The most recent beach renourishment, is that the way to go? Is there enough money set aside for beach renourishment? What's the recent past and the future in your mind?
No.
Okay.
No. While we were fighting with Lee County and running dump trucks on our street, Captiva was pumping sand on their beaches from offshore. Why? Why didn't we know this? Why didn't we say, you're already here, come on down, this is what we need? What's going on here? I mean, it's not good planning. They can say they're planning, it's not good planning. The second issue is the money. No, there's not enough money. When you have an ordinance that can be divided up according to the political whims. So the solution for the money would be whether we need another cent tourist tax. I'm not sure that that's the case at all. I just think we need to rewrite the ordinance so that we dedicate a certain percentage for beach renourishment. We have a history from the 80s to know how much it's increased over the year. There are a lot of smart people out there, what they expect to go into the future. Obviously, Captiva didn't find it too expensive to pump in the sand. What happened?
Well, something like this calls for regionalism. What would you
Yes.
say is the state of that with our 2 commissioner boards?
You mean Lee County?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I think, or even Sarasota, you could go on up there. We did that in the cities when the fire department of the state of Florida came in and said that the condominiums along Gulf Shore Boulevard had to be retrofitted for all this very expensive sprinklers, and the condominiums got together through the cities and all the cities along the coast or Gulf Coast and got it changed. We did it. And so we have to realize, as the Regional Alliance, Regional Alliance is, that we are a region and we need to start interfacing with other communities as a region. We're not isolated anymore. I understand we're the furthest south on the peninsula. I'm not talking about Key West, that you can go in Florida on the West Coast. I understand that. I understand that it takes almost 6 hours to get to Jacksonville. That's no excuse. It is now time to look at savings and cost savings and working with other communities. Am I saying it's going to be easy? No. Am I saying it's going to happen next year? No. But we've got to start it. Got to.
If you were to shift the tourist tax to put more money toward the beaches, where would you take it away from? Museums, parks, marketing? Where would you take the money away from?
I think that we'd have to look at the marketing, because I think the marketing, understandably so, we had a downturn in the economy, the marketing of our community was very important, but I'm not sure we have to worry about that anymore.
Are you receiving financial support from any organizations, and what are those organizations
No.
in your campaign?
No organizations, and I'll say that. You give me, and who are my supporters? You know, I've been at this for over a year, so, but no organizations, no.
Yeah, Penny, we're about out of time. Is there a few thoughts, anything we haven't touched on you want to make sure to get across, or just a final message for voters?
Well, for the voters, I'm the real deal. I'm kind of the best of all worlds. I've got a very strong business background, and I'm also experienced in government involvement as being a city council person for 10 years. 2 of those years I was vice mayor. I would welcome and be very thankful for a chance to serve you. I have always given folks access. I'm known as a hard worker. I'm known as someone who does their homework, and I want to work for you. This is a great, great county, and I'm very optimistic about its future, and I'd like to bring my optimism and my vision to work for Collier County. Thank you.